Tonight, the probation service mistakes that allowed a violent man to assault and murder Zara Alina. Failure after failure meant Zara didn't make it home that night. Instead, her attacker had been left free to roam the streets of London, hunting for a victim.
Zara's life was taken, and probation have blood on their hands.
Tonight, we'll look at the failures that led to Zara's death and whether the probation service is fit for purpose. Also on the programme. Police are still looking for this couple and their newborn, last spotted buying camping equipment on one of the coldest weeks of the year. The backlash against plans for a women-only block of flats in Ealing, and
the name for this year's challenge, the Run for 1 Million.
Made in Chelsea style, Joshua Patterson will be here to tell us about his latest challenge. Good evening. It was a catalogue of failures by the probation service that cost Zara Alina her life. The man who killed her had a history of violence and was released just 9 days before he roamed the streets of London looking for victims in June 2022, the same night he came across Alina. Upon release, he had been wrongly labelled medium risk by the probation service. Not only that, but they failed to rearrest him when he missed meetings while out on licence. Those are just two of a long list of mistakes. Today, her family said the service had blood on their hands. Rags Martel reports.
Jordan McSweeney, you're under arrest for rape and murder.
They got him eventually, but it was too late. Jordan McSweeney should have been locked up.
You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence.
Instead, errors in the probation system allowed a sexual predator to roam the streets freely, murdering and raping Zara Alina as she walked home in Ilford, East London, last year.
Our streets are not safe. Probation work has to be tight, has to be high quality, because the risks, the stake is high. The stake is lives. Zara's life was taken, and probation have blood on their hands.
This is McSweeney in June last year. CCTV showed him stalking the streets, looking for women to attack. Now a report by the judicial watchdog has outlined a series of failures. He should have been assessed as a high-risk offender, not medium. A probation officer didn't even have his address. McSweeney wasn't rearrested when he failed to meet a probation officer whilst on licence. He should have been recalled to prison on the 20th of June last year after he didn't turn up for a second appointment. Instead, it took them until the 24th of June to sign off the paperwork. 2 days later, Zara was murdered.
It is concerning that recommendations we've made in the past for similar cases haven't yet been acted upon, so I am concerned that the probation service isn't learning from reviews like this and from our local inspections, and it's vital that they move urgently to improve the way that they manage risks of harm.
Claire Waxman is the Victims Commissioner for London.
Who do you blame for this?
I mean, it's very easy to always look to government, but we have to talk about our justice system as a whole, which has been chronically underfunded for over a decade. Again, looking at this case, there wasn't enough intervention work done with McSweeney. We just see, this litany of errors and failings because the system is chronically underfunded and it's collapsing.
It was on this road that Jordan McSweeney attacked Zara Alina. She was just walking home, but he should have been in prison.
What's your reaction knowing that Jordan McSweeney was on your streets when he really should have been in prison?
It's tragic.
The leader of Redbridge Council believes this could have happened anywhere.
I think I worry about the safety across the land. We cannot go on where the service that we rely on is just simply not fit for purpose. And we've got to get that fit for purpose, and that has to come from central government. The probation service didn't suddenly get on its knees. This is something that's been in the making, and we've seen it with the devastating impact it's had on Zara's family.
This afternoon, the government apologised for the mistakes in the probation service.
These were unacceptable. These were unacceptable failings that I have outlined. But I do want to know that the increase in resource and the increase in staffing is happening right now.
But the tragedy for Zara Alina, these failings led to her death. A woman who was just walking home. Rags Martel, ITV News, Ilford.
Well, in his report, Justin Russell acknowledged that this case is set against a backdrop of excessive workloads and challenges in London. Well, to talk about this some more, we're joined by Ian Lawrence, who's the General Secretary of the NAPO, which is the Union for Probation and Family Court Staff. Thank you so much for coming in to talk to us about this, Ian. What do you make about what Justin said about the service in London?
I think our members would be hard pushed to quarrel with his findings in terms of the things that he's discovered. There will be things in his report that we will want to look at intrinsically to be sure they're absolutely accurate about the chain of events. But the direction of travel and the recommendations are things we've been arguing for quite some time.
I mean, there are a lot of people watching who will question as to whether our probation service, especially in London, which has been struggling with taking on staff and is understaffed at the moment, there are those that will be wondering, is it fit for purpose? What would you say to them?
Well, let's go back, shall we, 7 years, because then the government decided to privatise probation and they created a number of community rehabilitation companies, of which London was one. I'm not going to sit here and criticise the staff, our members who worked in that service, but they were working under a different regime from the one they've been used to. The government wanted to cut costs, make efficiency savings, streamline the system to supervise people. And what you've got here in this tragic case is a legacy from there. And the litany of errors, as you describe it, however, need to go back as far as the prison service, who didn't produce information for the probation service, who didn't provide information for the probation service latterly. And information just wasn't there.
And it just seems, I mean, there's a lot of, left not talking to right. There was a lot of links that weren't being made. And 5 years ago, the Ministry of Justice did say that the quality of service was falling short. And here we are, 2 consecutive weeks. We've got the probation service coming under fire when it comes to releasing violent men who've then gone on to murder women, which is just, we should not be in this situation. And you say that your members are trying their best, but the workloads are just too much. I mean, what is it? Is it money that they want? What is it that, that can put the public at ease with this?
Money in itself is a factor because people, experienced staff, I've had a message today from someone of 30 years service, just had enough and resigned. And that's shocking. And then we have new trainees who we welcome, and they're highly skilled young people in the main, who've come in and take one look at what's facing them and walk out after 4 weeks.
So what is it right now that you want the government to be doing to make people on the streets feel safer and feel like violent criminals simply aren't roaming the streets of London to do this again and again?
Okay, 2 things. The Minister, and I've heard Damien Hines with respect, well, I want to see his boss. I want to see the Secretary of State for Justice. I mean, his friends are talking to all sorts of trade union leaders at the minute, but why hasn't he engaged with us over the findings of the last 2 weeks? He needs to tell us what he's going to do to invest in the service, to make it a place where people want to work, want to stay, and a service where the practice is so excellent that people do feel safe in their communities. It's no fun for our members.
No. OK, well, thank you so much for coming in to talk to us, Ian.
You're welcome.
A teenager has been found guilty of killing an Afghan refugee in a park in Twickenham. Hazrat Wali died in hospital after being stabbed on Craneford Way playing fields last October. This afternoon, a jury at the Old Bailey found a 17-year-old guilty of manslaughter after he said stabbing was a way to release anger. A man who murdered his 15-year-old niece has been refused release from prison by the parole board. Danielle Jones was last seen in 2001 when she left her home in East Tilbury. Her uncle, Stuart Campbell, was jailed for life the following year. And Twitter is being sued by the Crown Estate for allegedly not paying rent for their London HQ. The social media company are accused of being in arrears on their offices in Piccadilly Circus. It comes just 3 months after Elon Musk bought the company for £36 billion.
Ever since Elon Musk has taken over, it's been kind of just lurching from chaos to chaos. Basically, Twitter is needing to pay its debts. That's the big problem here. And it's trying to do that by squeezing suppliers. It's been not paying people their severance packages, for example. So it's just part of that kind of desperate attempt to try to save money.
Detectives looking for a missing couple and their newborn baby now believe they may be staying in a tent. Simon Harris is outside New Scotland Yard for us now. Simon, what do we know?
Charlene, 2 nights ago, temperatures in some parts of London fell as low as -8. It's hard to believe why anyone would choose to sleep in a tent with a newborn baby at this time of year. But that's precisely what police think Constance Martin and Mark Gordon are doing with their new baby. The police have released new CCTV pictures of the couple, showing them being dropped off by a taxi on Whitechapel Road on the evening of Saturday, June the 7th. Gordon is pictured then coming out of a nearby branch of Argos carrying 2 bags. The police now know that he bought a blue 2-man tent, 2 sleeping bags and 2 pillows. Later, the couple are seen on another part of Whitechapel Road. She's pushing a child's buggy, he's carrying the bags. Both are wearing masks. In Adler Street nearby, they swap roles. He's now got the buggy, she's got the bags. Finally, the cameras pick them up in Brick Lane, and this is the last sighting of them so far.
Gone down to -6, -7. A newborn baby at that, on the 7th would have only been 2 or 3 days old. We know that babies should be kept in a warm, in an environment, at that age. And clearly today, the significant risk, and my plea is to find the baby, because, with these weather conditions, that's where the risk lies.
OK, Simon, do police have any idea where they are now?
No, they could be camping anywhere, so the police want anyone who's out walking or in a public open space, if they see a tent, to give them a call. Constance Martin has been estranged from her family pretty much ever since she began her relationship with Mark Gordon. He's a convicted sex offender who served 20 years in prison in America after he was convicted of rape. And the police say they're primarily concerned for the well-being of their baby.
OK, Simon, thank you. Sadiq Khan's announced funding for 800 new homes for rough sleepers in the capital. The mayor was at a hotel in Newham this morning, where people are offered temporary respite from the streets. But with homelessness in London rising again, is this a sticking plaster or a solution? Sam Holder reports.
The freezing weather can be a matter of life or death for rough sleepers, and numbers in London are rising. In response, the mayor has announced 800 new homes. Sadiq Khan was visiting a hotel in East London. Organised by the Crisis charity, it provides rooms for 150 rough sleepers over Christmas. But that respite is temporary. They have to leave in 2 days. Some have new accommodation, but some, like Steve, do not. And it is devastating.
You actually have no idea what's happening to you after 2 days?
No idea whatsoever.
You haven't heard anything about the housing?
Nope. Nothing. It's quite frightening.
Today's big announcement, funded by the government, will help rough sleepers in the long term. But for those facing sub-zero temperatures on the street, it's an urgent problem.
Well, Steve, like other guests here, have been supported by Crisis and St Mungo's. I've met some of the excellent caseworkers, some of the brilliant volunteers supporting those rough sleepers. They're working around the clock to try and find long-term accommodation, often in the private sector, because unfortunately we've not got the number of homes we need in councils and registered social landlords. That's why we're lobbying for more money from the government.
But in the meantime, he'll be back on the street?
Well, I don't think so. Fingers crossed.
Millions and millions have been spent in recent years to try to reduce the level of homelessness in the capital. And for a while that was working, especially during the pandemic. But between July and September, the total number of rough sleepers actually went up by nearly a quarter. And the number of new rough sleepers went up by 35%.
We're seeing large numbers of people coming to our Christmas services and to our year-round services simply because they can't make ends meet. Rents have gone up 15% in London, but housing benefits have been frozen. And these things are a recipe for homelessness and particularly for rough sleeping.
The 800 new homes will make a big difference. But between July and September, more than 3,500 people slept for at least a night on London's pavements. Sam Holder, ITV News.
Yesterday we told you about Black Boy Lane in Tottenham being renamed because of its racial connotations. Well, the newly installed La Rose Lane street sign has already been vandalised. The road is now named after the iconic black poet and artist John La Rose. The leader of Haringey Council tweeted this picture of the sign this afternoon, saying he was really sad and disappointed. Still to come on the programme, 76 marathons in 76 cities in 76 days. Made in Chelsea star Josh Patterson will be here to chat about his world record attempt. And we meet the Londoner selected to represent the UK at the Art Olympics. But first, plans for a new women's-only tower block in West London have been met with resistance from people living in the area. The development opposite Acton Town Tube Station is designed by Women's Pioneer Housing and would be made up of more than 100 affordable homes. But residents say another high-rise will turn the area into a concrete jungle. Our senior correspondent Ronke Phillips reports.
Very small flats, bedsit studios and a few one-bedrooms.
Brook House currently has 39 flats and is in a prime position right opposite Acton Town Tube Station. The block is only 5 storeys high, but if plans submitted to the council are approved, the new building will have 15 floors, doubling the number of homes to provide much-needed housing.
These properties are usually quite small. They're really coming to the end of their life, and it's really not economical to try and expand them, to try and refurbish them. This gives us a great opportunity, this land, to build even more homes. So we're doubling the number of affordable housing for women on this site alone.
The scheme is being delivered by Women's Pioneer Housing, a group set up in 1920 to provide affordable homes for women on low incomes. They're working in partnership with L&Q through the Build London Partnership. At least 60 people have commented on the development using the council's planning application website. To date, only 9 of those posts are in favour, which means 80% of those who responded are against. The balance was similar among the people we spoke to today.
I'd say it doesn't sound great because of the landscape, how it's sort of set out. Nothing is that high, so it doesn't sound like a great idea.
There's so many high-rise flats around here, all the way down Bollow Lane. Everywhere you look down the high street, there's so many high-rise flats. Where is Acton going to go?
I don't see the problem with demolishing a space that houses maybe 50 people and turning it into a complex that can house 150 people, especially when we're in a housing crisis as we speak.
The developers also argue that they've had to build up to avoid existing properties and take into account a water sewer that runs across the middle of the site. The plans were submitted at the end of last year, but so far the council is playing its cards very close to its chest. When we contacted them for comment, they would only say the application has been received and is being considered. Ronke Phillips, ITV News.
Now, my next guest is no stranger to taking on a physical challenge. You might recognise Josh Patterson from Made in Chelsea, but is now better known as an ultra runner. During lockdown, he ran 6 marathons in 5 days in his garden, raising more than £20,000 for the mental health charity Calm. Before that, he completed the Berlin Marathon in a wheelchair alongside his friend who'd been paralysed in an accident. Well, Josh is now preparing to take on his biggest challenge yet, setting a world record by becoming the first person to run a marathon in every city in the UK consecutively, 76 marathons in 76 days in 76 cities. And I'm thrilled to say that you're with us, Josh. Why? Why are you doing this? That's a lot.
Do you know, are you reading that there? My heart's just pumping. It makes it so real. I think initially it was just this idea, and now we've decided to make it a reality.
Yeah.
It's exciting, but I'm very nervous, to be honest.
So why are you doing it?
I really want to impact and support as many people as I possibly can, in all honesty. And I think over the past number of years, with all the challenges that I've been doing, to have somebody come up to you and acknowledge what you've done and it impacted them or somebody they know in some sort of way, for me, that's how I'm fulfilled, in all honesty. It's been an absolute pleasure to serve as many people as I possibly can.
Because you are a great supporter of people looking after their mental health, right?
100%. I think right now there are so many uncertainties with mental illness and how we can try resolve this in the best possible way. And I think there are too many people pointing fingers right now of what's not being done, and I think we need to start focusing on what we personally can do ourselves. And so for me, the charity Samaritans that I'll be raising money for, I know at the end of the day when we raise this money, we can fund life-saving phone calls, and that's what people, they need. They just need some support. And I think whether that phone call takes a minute or 5 minutes, if that's the difference between them making that, that big decision ultimately not to take their life, then for me, this is an absolute no-brainer.
But it's such, I mean, yes, it's a physical challenge, but this is very much a mental challenge as well. You've got to keep going for those 76 consecutive days. So how have you been looking after your own mental health to keep going with training and stuff?
Number one, I think the impact that I wish to make in my daughter's life. You know, she's my biggest inspiration, and I feel that by doing these things, I can set an example. I think for a lot of people that may have lost loved ones to this terrible disease, hopefully this can help them with their healing process. I've connected with a lot of parents in particular. And for those that are really struggling, you know, if I can put myself through some temporary pain and make a difference in their life, then, you know, that would be an absolute privilege.
Yeah, and what's the thing you're most looking forward to? Because it all kicks off next month, doesn't it?
Yeah, so do you know what? The United Kingdom is an incredible place. We've seen it. And I think when we are together, and that's one of the hashtags, Go Further Together, you've seen the phenomenal things that could be achieved. And to be honest with you, I will not be able to successfully achieve this unless I have the backing of the people. And I think to be able to go to all 4 nations and have that support is going to be phenomenal. I am truly, truly excited.
Now, what do you think will be going through your mind the night before all this starts on February the 26th?
I just have to be calm. I think this is the thing. People, I think in these situations, you can't get too amped up. I think the reality is there are 76 marathons here, and we've got to take them day by day by day. We can't get ahead of ourselves too much, and I just really hope that my body will hold out for the duration.
So do I, because 76 days, 76 marathons in 76 days is just incredible. And we really do wish you the best of luck, Josh.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks for coming in. OK, to sport now, and it was a record-equalling evening for Harry Kane last night.
The back foot. Kane, clinical, just as he's always been.
This goal by the Spurs striker was enough to earn his side 3 points against Fulham and to equal the great Jimmy Greaves as the highest goal scorer at the club with 266 goals. Sticking with football, and Boreham Wood faced off Accrington Stanley this evening in a replay of the 3rd round of the FA Cup. It was postponed last week because of an unsafe pitch. The winners of tonight's game will face Leeds United at home in the next round. And Saracens duo Elliot Daly and Jamie George have withdrawn from England's Six Nations training camp after suffering injuries in the last European Cup match against Edinburgh. Fullback Daly has a hamstring injury, while hooker George is sidelined with concussion. Right, Sally's here. Feels like January's never going to end. Sal?
Oh, I know, and I'm sorry about that, Charlene. I offer my heartfelt apologies, but I come with good news because, obviously, our days are getting longer. So take a look at this. If you live in the north, lucky old you get an extra 4 minutes of daylight a day, but we here in the south are getting 3 minutes of extra daylight. And so that means, next slide, please, sir, that we are going to have we've had, since the solstice, an extra hour of daylight. So things are looking up. Yeah. It's quiz time.
Oh, God.
What time do you reckon sunset is now?
Tonight? 5:32.
Oh, gosh, that's very optimistic. Tone it down a bit, Charlene. It's 4:30 and still a bit cold. Guess what? Here's the forecast.
ITV London weekday weather is sponsored by Octopus Electric Vehicles. Car, charger and energy.
Hello again. I hope you had a good day. We've had some great sunsets and sunrises. This is yesterday. Isn't that just stunning? I love it. And some people noticing a little bit of a thaw, that ice breaking up a bit. It's still quite cold outside. And tonight, the risk of further frost and freezing fog under those clear skies. Tomorrow, a pretty dry day, but later on, a bit of drizzle moving through. And, well, yeah, you guessed it, still a bit cold. So let's take a look at the detail for you. We've been through this before, where we've got those clear skies. That's where we've got the highest risk of that freezing fog and that sharp frost. So again, watch out for visibility issues and any icy stretches. Under the cloud, less chance, although still some patchy frost and a bit of murkiness possible. Wherever you are, though, it is going to be a cold start tomorrow morning, down to around freezing, if not a little bit below, particularly in the countryside. So Wednesday, once again, kicks off on another cold note. There might be some early brightness, but the clouds pretty dominant tomorrow. And on higher ground, that's where, again, we could get a bit of mist and murkiness as we go through the day. So the temperatures are a degree up, but it's quite subdued, still below average and still highs of only about 5 to 7 degrees. So a lot of the daytime, as I said, staying dry, but just into the evening, that's when we're going to see a little bit of rain and drizzle moving through, not too much, and it should move through fairly fast. So the outlook is all looking quite calm. We've got high pressure as we move into Thursday and Friday, so some brightness, but there is quite a bit of cloud around in the mix. Our temperature's quite low, still expect some overnight frosts, and finally by the weekend we should see things just coming up a little bit. That's it for now. I'll see you later on. Cheerio.
ITV London Weekday Weather is sponsored by Octopus Electric Vehicles.
Described as the Olympics of the art world, the Venice Biennale is a festival that brings together the most talented artists from all over the world. In the British Pavilion section, Damien Hirst, David Hockney and Tracey Emin have all exhibited in the past. And this year, London filmmaker and artist Sir John Akomfrah joins that list. Antoine Allen reports.
The idea that one day an artist of colour, never mind me, I'm just an artist of colour in general, would do the British Pavilion was as remote a thought as going to the moon, frankly.
John Akomfrah's art aims to make people feel and act on topics from racial injustice to climate change. His 40 years as an artist and filmmaker were recognised as he was selected for one of British art's highest honours, the British Pavilion.
John Akomfrah.
At Christie's, the British Council announced Akomfrah will represent Britain at the 60th International Art Exhibition, La Biennale di Venezia, said to be the Olympics of the arts world.
And just the feeling of being anointed by your community to do good feels huge.
The judges said Akomfrah's inspiring style and narrative
they can reach the very top of it, that's really important.
John, throughout your career you've been such a source of inspiration to so many. If you were to give advice to the young artists that want to follow in your very big footsteps, what would it be?
Make lots and lots and lots of mistakes. Because you know what? They're usually the signature of you. They're your personality.
John's selection puts him alongside previous nominees such as Tracey Emin and Steve McQueen. Akomfrah's British Pavilion at Biennale Arte Venezia will run next year from April until November. Antoine Allen, ITV News.
And before we go, some happy news for Bill Nighy, who's been nominated for his first Oscar at 73.
You know, I remember what it's like to be alive, what I wanted.
The actor's originally from Caterham and is up against Austin Butler, Brendan Fraser, Colin Farrell and Paul Mescal in the Best Actor category. He's also been nominated for a Golden Globe and Critics' Choice Award for his work in the film Living. So we all wish him the best of luck. But that's it from us for now. We're back with the latest after ITV News at 10. Mary, of course, is here next with the ITV Evening News. But for me and the rest of the London team, have a great evening. Bye-bye.